What's going on, moms and dads? Welcome to the Fade You podcast, episode 195, recording on Tuesday, February 28th. Last day of February, everybody knows what that means. We'll get to it shortly. The Fade You podcast is the sports betting show for the everyday bettor. Whether you're a total degen or you're just looking for a little action, we are glad you're here checking out our show. Whether you've been with us for a while, whether you're brand new, we're happy to have you and thank you for your support. My name is Matthew James. Got my dad, Chris Duke, here with me. Chris, I haven't seen you in several weekends. You haven't been on the pod since you lost your ass betting the under in the Super Bowl. How's it hanging, Dad?
Pretty good, man. Nice little trip to Adams' neck of the woods, the East Coast, to see my brother. So weird time change, 3 hours forward, 3 hours back. But it's good to be back where the games start nice and early, around 3:30, 4 o'clock.
Oh, it's the best.
I got to admit, Chris, I'm warming up to that a tiny bit. Like, I can't stay up that late these days. It gets harder and harder to make it through the West Coast games. And my day starts so early. I'm because I remember, like, I was so against that, and I feel like we had this argument, maybe even on the show, and I was just like, I can't do the early starts. I guess there's times of the year, right? Like, I don't love it for March Madness. For March Madness, I prefer to have the game start later, go later. Just like, we were out in Vegas, and it's like, it's 10. We're still, like, ready to hang out, and there's no games.
Yeah.
But I think I'm starting to come around on just a day-to-day basis with you guys. Like, get all this stuff done by 10 o'clock, get in bed. It's warming up to it.
It was so crazy because obviously the average bettor isn't looking at Nevada, Fresno State, but obviously I was, and I'm like, holy shit, that game doesn't start till 11. I was in bed next to my wife at like 1 a.m. looking like, come on, cover, motherfuckers, cover. I'm like, how did people do this?
Well, it's like Chris said, sometimes on the West Coast, all you need is a little adrenaline, like the Sac State ending last night. You make 0 threes the whole game, and then one finally goes in with 30 seconds left. That was just a hell of an ending. And, that's what we get here on the West Coast. Keeps us awake and keeps us going. So before we get to Adam, a couple things. If you are listening to this and you want more, please subscribe to our podcast. We're closing in on 200 episodes. So a lot of good backlog content there for you, including a couple previous episodes with Adam. So all those you can check out. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at FadeUSports. If you are watching this on the YouTube, thank you for doing that. Please like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll do live streams sometimes, but we're glad you're watching or listening however you are, and look forward to another great conversation with one of our oldest and best friends, Adam Trigger. He's on Twitter at TopFlightSI. Tomorrow is March 1st. That means the madness is nearly upon us. We wanted to have Adam on and talk about just a hell of a college basketball season for him, both betting and traveling. It's been crazy. Wanted to have him on and talk about his travels and look ahead to conference tournaments. So, Adam, thanks for making time for us. You've been a busy boy these last few months, but we're glad you could make it on and talk some college hoops.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. No, I'll be honest. It's starting to catch up with me. You can hear the voice starting to go. I have a little bit of a cold because I haven't gotten a ton of sleep. I was in Texas, then New Orleans over the weekend. And but you know what? We're going to be upset and sad when college hoop is gone. We've only got another month of it. We'll relax over the summer, I guess, a little bit. But right now, college hoops, it's been great. Like, I started at the beginning of the season, so just to give a little background, I decided this was the year I was going to just start going to as many random places as possible. I'd love to hit every Division I college venue at some point in time. So I set a goal for myself. I want to hit 25 a year. I'm going to just scatter them throughout the country, see different conferences, see what I can pick up along the way. It's actually been like super helpful. I think I've had last year was the worst college basketball season I had ever had. I said, we got to do something different this year. And I really do think that seeing these teams in person has given me a little bit of an edge. Definitely seeing some of the venues has helped tremendously. So, being able to sort of re-rate like what I would give at a certain home court, for home court versus another. they're all not, no two home courts are equal, and not every team has a home court advantage. And I think that's like been arguably my biggest takeaway from the whole thing.
That's awesome. I mean, you've had so many stops. I don't know if you want to run through them all or if you want to just pick maybe a few that have really stood out. Like what? I mean, you're living a dream that a lot of people want to do is they want to travel the country. They want to go to all these gyms in college football. They want to go see all the stadiums. So, I mean, what stands out the most, I guess, from this crazy season?
Yeah. So first, I'll just say I am engaged, and my fiance is extremely supportive to let me do this. I know most probably wouldn't be allowed to do it. So shout out to her for putting up with this all season. And yeah, I just kind of started. I was like, oh, well, I'll just hit one a week, and then like I said, I got 25 in mind. I have the list right here. So, and this is the first time I've been asked to like talk about it. So I figured I would just rattle down the different places I've been real quick, like one sentence about each. And if you guys want to know more, I'll elaborate. First game of the year I went to was Canisius, Buffalo, New York. The building is still from 1960 or 70. I think
That's
it was
awesome.
built in 68, and I don't think it's been touched since. Basically a high school gym. Second game was UNLV. So I did make it out to the West Coast briefly. I will have to come and see you guys next year. We'll have to hit some of the California stops.
We've got a couple ideas for you for sure.
Okay.
Chris and I can run through a couple.
Yeah, because I didn't get to California at all this year. UNLV was cool. Thomas and Mack Center. What I started to notice, and I'll just go into the next venue, BYU, which was awesome. This huge, I mean, it's like 19,000 seat arena on campus. It's tough to find good crowds non-conference. Like BYU had like the game I went to, they played Missouri State. They had 13,000 people, but like I'd like to get back there at some point to see them play a Gonzaga or a St. Mary's when the place is packed. UNLV, I saw them play Dayton. I'm thinking, okay, top 25, like Dayton, believe it or not, you have to go way back, right? But like they were a top 25 team coming into the season. And the crowd, like it was good, not great. UNLV won that game as an underdog. Just to summarize, so I then started to figure that out. And I was like, all right, let me just hit some of the smaller one, maybe like places I've been already. And then I was just doing it for, to go in order, or just places I didn't think have much of a atmosphere all year. And I pushed off some of the bigger and better places to like conference season. So I went, all these places like Colgate, Marist, Vermont, Buffalo, all places I did those early, all places I had been before. No huge like Colgate's like right around the corner from where I live, probably like 25 minutes away from me. Tough place to play because it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. Another very, very small, very old gym. But I do think they're going to update that at some point. And Vermont badly needs a new venue, and they're currently building one. I actually got to you can see them building it, so that I think is set to be done in a couple of years. But they essentially play into a high school gym as well. My favorite one from the beginning of the season, guys, Fairfield University in Connecticut. They just built a new arena this year. It's called Mahoney Arena. It opened in December. It is absolutely phenomenal. Like if every school, in my opinion, should go and see what they did for a 3,000 seat arena on campus.
Wow.
It's awesome.
It only holds 3K.
3,400. They sold it out the first night against St. Peter's. Their team is not great this year. I think if they were putting a good product on the floor, they would have probably sold out every game. I saw them play Yale in front of a pretty good crowd. The students were there, and just guys, it's just so granted, they got a big donation to do it. I get it. Like every small school is not going to have that in their budget, but they essentially made a mini arena. So it's like it's 2 levels. It only holds 3,400. They've got this private club upstairs. I mean, $75 to get into the private club. It includes your ticket. You can watch from upstairs, and they've got like full bar, carving station, all this food. Like, so, you probably got a bunch of alumni up there. Kids sit under the basket, and it's built like almost up. So there's not like a huge incline. So the kids in the people in the upstairs, you are like on the court. It's like you're on top of the court. Um and I mean, when they did sell it out that first game of the year, they blew St. Peter's out. So that's a place very cool. If you're in the Northeast, probably gonna have to be next season at this point. Get out to it's in Fairfield, Connecticut, Mahoney Arena, one of my favorite stops of the whole year. Buffalo and UMass, like so UMass, I've noticed this, guys, like a lot of these Northeastern teams, the teams in the Northeast that are in the Hockey East conferences, like so we'll use UMass for example. That's one of the ones I went to. Not great venues. They play in essentially hockey rinks. And they're just like Quinnipiac's another one of them. I didn't get there this year, but not like the best atmosphere for basketball. UMass was like a terrible atmosphere. I don't think they're getting many fans in the seats, even with Frank Martin out there. Um, and Buffalo was another pretty dead atmosphere. And someone I was sitting next to said, you know what? There's just a lot to do in the city other than go watch, Buffalo basketball. Like sports wise, you have the Sabres, the Bills, of course, early in the season. That it just gets lost in the shuffle. So that was kind of the early part of my season. Cornell was another one I hit early on, like before, I think right at the beginning of conference play, 600 people showed up. Shit, like, so that was kind of the first. So I summarized right there. That was like the first 10. And if you have any follow-ups for that, I can elaborate, or we can get into what I considered the more fun part, the bigger ones, the Baylors and the Missouris and stuff like that.
No, that's amazing. Yeah, because you go to those bigger schools, you're obviously going to get more of a crowd. I was shocked to see, like, my one fun one was Loyola Marymount, and if you come out next year, I've got a guy that used to coach golf at UCI, and he can hook us up with great seats. So I'll hit him up when you get out here. We'll do a fun little, because we got, like you and I talked about, we got like 5 schools within an hour of each other. You could just go Tuesday night, Thursday night, Friday night. But I wanted to ask you, because I was shocked. I mean, it's funny. I come from St. John Bosco. They just played in a CIF game in high school. I was like, I went to Loyola Marymount. I'm like, I think my high school gym holds more than this. What was I don't know if you just had, hooked it up with WagerTalk, but a lot of these, I was shocked when I went to LMU how reasonable, like there was like $12, $14 tickets. I'm like, this is easy to come watch your team. You're not breaking the bank. Do you remember what one was the cheapest ticket?
Yeah. So amazingly enough, the one I went with a buddy of mine, this over the weekend at Tulane, and we sat right on like 10th row center. And I think those tickets were like $15 a piece. That was like
awesome.
That was like the one. And I'll get to Tulane in a minute. I was gonna say but yeah, like Murse was like a $10 ticket. A lot of them are really not expensive. The only time it gets pricey is when you get to some of these bigger schools and you have to start hitting the resale market. Like if it's like a big game, which and you only have to do that because the tickets like go so quick. So like for example, I'm trying to think of the one that was probably the most expensive was, I don't know, like probably UConn at the XL Center against Marquette, only because I kind of decided to go last second. And it was, if you wanted to buy, like, it was basically a sellout. And if you wanted to buy a ticket, you were either in the nosebleeds or you had to pony up a little bit to get like a good seat. But
did you go to, were you with KIV in Manhattan? That must have been electric, huh?
So that's a great transition here. I will tell that story. So basically, yeah, that was something we had planned. Kelly's like, she knew I was going to do this. She's like, all right, we got to go to Kansas State, Kansas, Manhattan, Kansas. She's like, you got to see the Octagon. It's going to be awesome. I said, yeah, I'm 100% in. We looked at the calendar. We found out Missouri was playing the next night. And so I don't know if you know Kai McKeon from 3-Man Weave, become friends. And I was like, hey, Kelly and I want to go to Missouri. He lives up in Chicago now. And I was like, we're going to go to Kansas State the night before. And he was like, oh, like that's going to be a great game. So everyone's there. We got it all figured out. And my flight, we have an ice storm in Syracuse the day before. And my flight just doesn't get out of Syracuse. not until way later in the day. So just a geography of Kansas, right? Oh, you almost impossible to fly into Manhattan. You pretty much have to fly into Kansas City, unless you're coming from like Chicago, basically. And it's a 2-hour drive. And so my flight got delayed so much that by the time I got to Kansas City, tip off was only about a half hour away. And like even if I had gotten in a rental, and flew down, because Kelly obviously had the rental, she already left. I mean, they're already there. Even if I'd gotten in the rental, I would have never made it. I said, you know what, we'll have to push that one off till next year. So I didn't get to go. And then of course, guys, it can't just be a blowout, right? It's got to be like the game of the season or like one of the better games. Goes to overtime. And do you think Kelly felt bad? No, she trolled me on social media. She's like, this sucks to suck or something, or
way
like
to miss your flight, like you had control over it and shit.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
So did not make it to Kansas State. Hopefully we'll get there next year. But because I was so upset about that, I extended my trip for a day, and my flight was going through Detroit. So I asked them if they could reschedule my connector, like the one to go back from Detroit to Syracuse. And I went out to East Lansing for Michigan State, Rutgers. That was pretty cool. 16th. That Breslin Center is very big too. They always get a good crowd. So that was a good one. Missouri, guys, was awesome. That was like kind of like I wasn't expecting that to be like totally packed, and great crowd. Was awesome. You want to know who had one of the worst crowds? I have to say this, like was Michigan.
Oh wow.
Number one, I went to see Michigan play number one Purdue, and that was the softest. I mean, it's Thursday at 9:00 at night, and I know most, but like Thursday 9 p.m. I mean everyone should have been off the wall. You got number one coming into your building, and crowd just wasn't good. It was just quiet.
Surprising.
And someone told me, guys, they're like, you know what, Michigan, they're not a basketball school. I was like, what do you mean they're not a basketball school? Like the Fab Five,
right?
They're like, no, it's a football school first, it's a hockey school second, it's a basketball school.
They lost. They were really good. They lost to Louisville in the Natty a few years back, right? 15 or 16 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not that they haven't had good teams. It's just like someone's like, listen, like the people up here, they care about football and hockey, and basketball is like, it's like nice when they're good, but they're just not as in the hoop. I didn't know that. Like I didn't really, I guess I didn't understand that. So Chrysler Arena, really nice, but dropped it down in my, I'm not going to give them the full 3 points for home court anymore after that.
How many does Missouri? Were they playing? I think we were on them that night. Were they playing A&M or something? Or
they were playing Arkansas, the game I went to, and they came back from. I mean, they looked dead to rights. Yeah. Arkansas was up 10.
Had a huge, nice run. Yeah,
Missouri closed it out with a big run to beat them. But yeah, that's and just to speed it up so we can get to move on. I'll just go like this past weekend. I went to Texas State, Baylor, which I had been to before. Waco's awesome. It's really like a really fun town, and that Baylor Texas game was great. And then Tulane was incredible. Do you guys know that Tulane's gym only holds 4,000 people?
Wow.
I didn't know that. I didn't realize that. And that's another one where I'm just like, there was 2,500 at the Wichita State Tulane game in a season where Tulane is pretty good. And I'm just like, I asked Mincy, so he was going to meet me so Ben Mintz Kelly's friend from Barstool was going to meet me at the game. He ended up not being able to make it. And I was like, dude, how is this place not sold out every game? It's only 4,000 seats. And he said the same thing. He's like, football and baseball down here. Tulane, the big baseball program. Yeah. Basketball's kind of like third fiddle. So it's been interesting. And I'll close it up with this so we can move on. The worst place, without question, to watch a basketball game is the Dome in Syracuse. And I have no problem saying that.
No, they're going to come after us.
I'm going to have to act Duffy on that one.
Come after me. Listen, guys, there is no Syracuse. I don't know why they can't, it just doesn't make sense to play basketball in the end zone of a football stadium. Okay. The sight lines suck. People are like, okay, so for football, awesome. great venue. Like I was at Syracuse NC State football earlier this year, sold out. They just put a new roof on the dome for the first time since it was built back in 1983. Tremendous atmosphere for football. Very loud because it's only 50,000 for football, and it's got a roof on it. So it's loud as hell. It's awesome. Basketball, the court's set up in the end zone. They roll in bleachers. So you basically have the field is just chilling. You know what I mean? Like the rest of the football field is just there. And there's 30 so I went to the Duke Syracuse game, 31,000 people. I mean, yes, it gets loud, but it's a very hollow loud because you're in this big dome. And most people can't see anything. Or certainly can't see well. So it's just it doesn't do it for me. I would rank that of the 23 places I've been, I would say that's the worst venue to watch college basketball.
Wow.
I really worst notable venue. And what was probably the biggest sleeper was Akron. I loved Akron. I went to Akron, Kent State. It holds 5,500 people. They oversold it by 300 tickets. It was a Friday night game, and they were at an 11 out of 10 the whole game. So that was probably the best crowd. Akron Zips. No wonder they never lose at home. Seriously.
Jay Buff he's gonna block us, and he's never gonna talk to you again. And the Syracuse fans are gonna come after us. That's surprising to hear because you hear so much about the Dome, and they have such a reputation. So I'm surprised to hear that. Places you haven't been that are definitely on the list going forward, would you say? Anything come to mind?
Oh, I mean, like I said, I want to get to them all. I don't care if it takes me 2 decades. I'll do it. Try to hit 25 a year. So obviously Manhattan, Kansas. I told Kel we have to reschedule for next year since I didn't get to go. But places I definitely want to get out and see some of the West Coast venues. I'd love to get up to Oregon next year if I can. Check out just hit obviously Eugene, but like a couple in Portland. You know what? I got a random one that I want to see. And I want to see if it's as bad as the Carrier Dome. I want to go to Northern Arizona and see, because I think they play in a dome as well. And I just want to see if it's as horrific as the Carrier Dome setup.
NAU, yeah. I don't, and you want to go see that blue court in Bakersfield, right?
Yeah. And the other thing, guys, I'm trying to do, what I decided is I'm just going to try to dictate, like I'm trying to go places where the teams are good, because then I feel like I'm going to get that's why CT was like, dude, we didn't go to a single game this year. Well, we went to Baylor, but he's like, you didn't come out to Boston once. I was like, all these Boston-based teams are awful this year. Like, they're all bad. Couldn't even find one good one. Like, BC's down, Northeastern's down, and there's a lot of schools out there just not. Even New York City. I didn't make it down to New York City at all. All the city-based teams not very good this year. So, that's just kind of how I'm going about it. And, if you want me to come to your town, hit me up. I've met so many people on this, just like I post something, tell them I'm at the game. I went to Youngstown State the other day. That was pretty cool. Youngstown, Ohio. Don't know if I need to go back there. Sorry, Youngstown, Ohio. But the school, like the arena, it was $2 beer night, and that line was 45 minutes long the entire night. So
beautiful.
Yeah, and that could be our segue here too, because I'm very, very high on that Youngstown State team. CT and I just hit them pretty hard to win the Horizon League tournament earlier today. So
nice. I followed you guys on that. Vegas said it was plus 150. Mine was 160. You guys got a good line, 190. That's awesome.
Yeah, he was over at WinBet. As of about a month ago. Sports betting legal in Massachusetts, where CT is. Between the two of us, we got it pretty well covered. I'm in New York, so we can pretty much hit all the books. We got all of the big ones now. And he saw minus 190. I'll be honest, guy. Like sometimes, like the value, like the favorite is the value occasionally, right? Yeah. Like and I think especially in scenarios, some of these conference tournaments, like you can look for prices all day long, but the only one that's gonna pay is the ticket that wins. So I hear a lot of I'll take a shot. Like I got this team at 30-1, and I'm in my head, I'm like, that team has zero chance, right? Like, so your 30-1 ticket in that scenario, it doesn't matter. I mean, because it just like, that's what I hear a lot of. In this case, Horizon League, they're reseeding the tournament, and so it's a kind of a quirky setup. The quarterfinal games are home venues still. So Youngstown State's going to get a home game tomorrow against whoever ends up being the worst seed from the games that are being played tonight. And I don't know if it's either tomorrow or Thursday. I actually think it's tomorrow. At the semifinal round, they all go to the Farmers Insurance Arena in Indianapolis, where they'll hold the semis and the finals. And Youngstown will always play the lowest seed because they reseed. You're looking at the 2, 3, and 4 in that conference. Milwaukee, Cleveland State. They're just Northern Kentucky. I mean, like some of them have beaten Youngstown on the road, but the only time Youngstown struggled this year is either on the road or when they didn't have, like, they weren't like fully focused. I can't see that happening in a conference tournament. So plus 190, I actually think is great value. I think it should be even money. So big bet on the Penguins in the Horizon League tourney for me.
Nice. No, you make a couple good points. Like that's a great point that sometimes the value is on the favorite. People see, I want to do more of a long shot. I want to take a 12-1. I want to take an 8-1. Well, that's nice, but if the favorite is the best team and that's where the value is, like those are going to win sometimes. And the other good point you made too is people hear conference tournaments and they might automatically assume neutral court, and that's not the case across the entire landscape of college football or college basketball. Some of them it is, but some you are going to have the higher seed play a home game, and then some are a hybrid, like you said, where after the quarters for the semis or for the final round, they'll play on a neutral site too. So people, before you just assume it's a neutral court, you should do your research and really just make sure that is the case.
Yeah, I mean, they're dwindling, right? Like there used to be more. Now it's like it's kind of a dying breed. I love, most of those tournaments are still up in the Northeast here that do that campus sites. I wish more did it. I actually really enjoy that. Like, so but to your point, like the Patriot League, going to be really hard to beat Colgate on their home floor, and they've got home court throughout. Same thing in the America East. Like, Vermont, I went to see Vermont earlier this year. They played Toledo at home, non-conference, and that's their only home loss. They didn't lose a home game in the America East regular season. And actually, interestingly enough, I brought this stat for this show when I was looking earlier. So the America East is all entirely on campus sites, and for whatever reason, there's 9 teams in the America East, and only 8 go to the tournament. They just say, whoever finishes last place, get the hell out. You're the only one that's not coming to this tournament. But of all the teams that could potentially host the game, so either New Jersey Institute of Technology or Albany will finish last. They're obviously not able to host the game, being the last place team. The top 7 teams in that conference all have winning home records. So take that into consideration. Like, look at America East tournament. Every single one of those teams has been very good at home. UMass Lowell did not lose a home game all season. Vermont did not lose a home game in conference play. Binghamton, which isn't very far from me, has played really well at home of late. If Maine somehow gets a chance, if Maine somehow ends up the 6th seed and hosts a game at some point, that's far. That's up in Bangor, so that's not even Southern Maine. Like, that's up there. That's a tough trip, and they play at 2 different venues. So I'm pretty sure they could choose which one they want. They play half their games where the hockey team plays and half their games in a small gym on campus. So I doubt we're going to see them host a game, but I mean they might if they're the 6 and they end up playing the 7 or the 8 down the road. They could put them in the small. Like, so it's interesting. I think it's the Patriot League, the America East, and then the Northeast Conference. I think those are the 3 that are entirely on campus sites. And then I think the Atlantic Sun, which is going on right now, and maybe the Horizon have like a hybrid, like you guys were saying. Other than that, I think we're all on neutral at this point. Every place is done away with the campus sites aside from those guys.
It makes me miss the Big West tournament. It used to be out here in Anaheim. They used to play at the Honda Center where the Ducks play. And that's, I mean, less than 5 minutes from where I live. Chris and I could easily go to that. But a few years ago, before COVID, or I think it was as a result of COVID, they moved it. I think, Chris, are they in Henderson, Nevada now?
I think that's where they moved it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, man. 6-7 years ago, it used to be fun to go watch UCI play Hawaii. Long Beach State used to actually have a decent squad. They used to show up at that tournament and play well. So those were the days. It's a lot of fun to go to those. Any conferences you want to highlight, Adam, where you feel like there might be an undervalued team or somebody who's had a good season that may blow it here late?
Yeah, so I went down. So Texas State was one of my stops this weekend. So I got to see Texas State play Southern Miss in their Sun Belt regular season finale. Southern Miss won the game and also won the Sun Belt with that win. So if you want to talk, if you were going to take a shot, if there was one conference where you were just going to take a flyer, and now mind you, this is probably you may see this after like this tournament's going on right now. It like just started, but I think you can still bet the like round by round. You should be able to bet the winner. I wouldn't be surprised if someone came out of nowhere and won the Sun Belt tournament. I'll give you a couple options. Like first of all, Texas State. So that is my big play tonight. Texas State. I laid the 4.5 against Jesus Christ. Why can't I think of who they're? I laid the 4.5 with Texas State tonight. They are playing. Why am I drawing a blank here? Oh, Georgia State, the worst team in the league.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. They're the 11 seed. They won that conference back-to-back years, the last 2 years. This year, you got to remember, you bring in the Conference USA teams and James Madison. So, and surprisingly, those teams like dominated this league. So Southern Miss won it. Marshall's up there. Old Dominion had a good finish. James Madison comes in and they were like, that's like 4 of your top like 5 teams in the conference. But it's interesting, like they're all going to be in their first go around of this conference tournament. And you've got teams like South Alabama, Texas State, who are expected to be like contenders in this league and just kind of like no-showed on the season. But they have upperclassmen, and you almost have to wonder, like, and it's part of the reason I like Texas State tonight. Can they like rally and just be like, okay, now it's like there's still an NCAA tournament bid on the line, right? Like Texas State won this league the last 2 years, didn't win their conference tournament, never got to the tournament. So like, I really think like Texas State is a team that you could take a shot with. If they win this game, they play Old Dominion, who's been banged up. They've had multiple guys miss games lately. And then South Alabama, I believe, would be playing into Southern Miss, who won the league, who will not win. They're not going to win this conference tournament. In my opinion, like, I don't know how that team managed to win that league. They were projected to be one of the worst teams in that league prior to the season, but I just watched them play. I'd be willing to fade them basically the whole way. The team that probably looks the most likely to win it, like Marshall, looks really good. But in my opinion, I would rather have like a South Alabama or a Texas State than like a Marshall or a Louisiana or someone that's like, because I really don't think there's like a huge gap in like a neutral court tournament type style setting between the top and the bottom in that league. So you could basically take your pick of those lower seeds in the Sun Belt and just ride one of them. I think any of them would be, it's going to be that's kind of the conference I see some random team just like coming out on top.
A little more wide open than maybe some of the other ones.
Yeah, for sure. In my opinion, I see, we had that 1 year, guys. Remember, it was, I think it was coming out of the COVID year. It was 2021 where like teams like Oregon State, Georgetown, and all these huge prices were cashing. And then like last year, it was like a lot of chalk. I think it might be more like a combination of both, but I don't think we're just going to see like Oregon State, that was just a weird year. And I don't think like, I think it's going to come back more to normal. Like that was just like a one-off year, half full stadiums. It was just a weird year.
You got to like pay attention to, I think you said like to your point, the Southern Miss, I think they're like the 4th fourth shot. So it's like you've won the league, but the books are saying like we still don't think you're going to win the tourney. And but yeah, when you're talking these bigger conferences, like they're going to tend to have, and that's where you should probably look for a long shot. Like
Definitely.
the Big Ten is wide open. Like, are we going to be shocked if like Iowa like pulls it out, even though they're not like the top? Are we going to be shocked if like a Okie State or Texas Tech makes a little bit of a run in the Big 12? Like, no, even though their record's not there, like they're competitive. They almost beat K-State. They should have beat K-State the other day. So it's like, or was it TCU? So I mean, those conferences you're going to have a little bit more. Even the Pac-12, yeah. Where if we see someone like like a Stanford, we know these guys are ASU might knock off Arizona or UCLA. So, but yeah, those smaller conferences you're talking about like can be a lot. I mean, I know didn't CT make a bet even though it's chalk on Zags. I mean, I could see Zags just running through.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Like those are not necessarily bad bets. You go to like the Colgates and the Vermonts that we talked about a second ago. Those are teams that are playing home games that have to win to go to the NCAA tournament. To your point, you get into some of these bigger conferences, and it's like that's right. That's where you take your chances because you have teams that they show. So the better teams, the ones that already know they're in my opinion, they show up, and it's like if they're still there come the weekend, then they care. Right. And it's like, so it's really difficult to you almost have to play like locker room psychologist a little bit. And that's really difficult. The bigger tournaments are extremely difficult because you have teams that have, they could come and you see it every year. Like one of these 1 seeds in like the Big 12 or something just gets
I remember last year
at
was
noon
Virginia Tech. Last year was
Yeah.
awful to see Virginia, huge dog against like North Carolina or Duke. They pull the upset. I mean, those teams that know, like you said, they're hungry. They know that they're not getting in unless they win. Where Duke's sitting back, like we know we're in.
Right. You almost have to wonder too. Like sometimes it's more beneficial for a Duke to lose early and just get the hell out of there and go home and chill till the NCAA tournament. Like we've seen this in years past. I think Seton Hall might have been one of them a few years ago, where they like just run the gauntlet, win the Big East tournament, and then just get blasted in the first round of the NCAA tournament. And then you have, but the other side of it, you have the memorable teams like the UConns, right? That like Kemba Walker just decides he's not going to lose a game ever again, wins the conference tournament, wins the NCAA tournament. So I don't like to really bet futures. I really am not I don't bet many conference tournament futures. I'll literally end up with like 1 or 2. That's why like for the Youngstown State thing is I think they're so much better than the rest of the teams in that conference that I feel like getting them at plus 190 is a good bet. And then of course you have I can hear Kelly's voice in my head right now saying you might get a better number if you just parlay it round by round. And that might be true. But in this case, I actually think plus 190 is good because they're going to get a home game where they're going to be a huge favorite, and they'll probably be a pretty decent favorite in both neutral court games. But it's worth pointing that out that that's another option. You just would have to kind of commit to it, right?
Yeah.
You can just keep rolling it over on a team, and then you've got a more of an out, right? You can be like, all right, I'm good. I'm just going to take this and go. You don't have to necessarily hedge.
Right. Yeah, and I mean that leads us to another good point to bring all the the listeners and the folks out there. Like, we see it all the time where if you you want to bet this fairy tale team, I want to take it because the 20-1 looks so good. Why instead of to Kelly's point, you're saying roll it over? Why not just keep betting? If these guys are going to be catching double digits, just take the point. And if they lose by 7. Now your future's not dead, but you just cashed a ticket on the points,
You absolutely nailed it. That's exactly like that's usually my answer. I typically won't take like you're saying, just if you think that there's decent value on a team, especially like it's like for Texas State, for example. Now, the only reason they're favored tonight is they're in this first round game against the bottom team in that conference. They will likely be a dog the rest of the way. If they get by Georgia State tonight, which I think they will, they'll be a dog. I probably won't bet them to win that tournament, but I may target them catching 5, catching 6 on a neutral floor if I think they have a chance, which I do. I couldn't agree more. That's definitely a better way. If you feel like you've got a team that can make a run, just keep riding them against the number, because you might go out like Rutgers a few years. Remember Rutgers a few years ago in the Big Ten tournament? I think it was in the Garden, and they if you bet Rutgers to win that whole thing, you went home with nothing, but they covered the number in that game against Purdue, and you could have made a good amount of money. There's just ones that pop into my head, but you're totally right, Chris. That's how I would look at it as well.
Something else Chris mentioned that I wanted to circle back to, talking about the bigger conferences. One of the really popular things you'll hear is bubble teams have to show well to get in, right? So I'm curious, you can, whether it's ESPN, CBS, Bleacher Report, whatever, anybody can find the teams that are quote unquote on the bubble, right? So people who are going to do that and research those teams and find out, okay, I know this team's on the bubble, so I'm going to bet them in some of their conference tournament games to do well. Do you think that's kind of priced in already? If they have to win in order to make it, how good are they really? So how should people approach betting bubble teams, not to win conference tournaments, but maybe to win a couple rounds and play their way into the big dance?
So once you get into bubble teams, you're getting in the bigger tournaments. And my best advice with those bigger conference tournaments is just tread as lightly as possible. The good news is, so the bad news is they're a minefield, right? It's a total crapshoot in a lot of cases, especially when you get to your point where it's okay, this team needs to win and they're playing. So here's what I noticed. This is basically the setup by Thursday or Friday of that next weekend, right? We're talking not it's going to be the conference tournament weekend leading into Selection Sunday. Most matchups start to get to be a team that needs to win against a team that is clearly better than them, but that team that's clearly better than them, we have to now guess if they give a shit or not, right? That's kind of what every one of those games is. It's superior team against clearly inferior team, but inferior team really this is win or go home. Superior team could lose by 20. They're still in the dance. So you're going to see a lot of that. And I would just say, make sure there's more to your handicap than just this team needs to win this game. So they're just going to try their hardest, because that may work. But if they run into one of these, good teams that cares, they're probably going to lose and they're probably not going to cover. So the good news is you don't have to bet every game, and there's a million tournaments going on. So stay selective, and you'll find a couple that are good spots and check all the boxes.
The extra wrinkle in that too is when you're talking about, does team that's good and in the tournament give a shit? Well, what if they're playing their hated rival, right? These are conference rivals. So that's another layer where you have to now guess, okay, do they care enough to try to keep UNC out or something like that? Is UNC a good example of a team that was preseason number one, has underachieved all season, and now what the fuck is going to happen with them in the next 2 weeks?
Right. So they could be a candidate for, they, this is their time, right? They need to, and there's precedence for that happening. Syracuse did it a couple years where they needed to rally off. You go way back. I'll be at the Dome on Saturday. They're retiring Jerry McNamara's jersey. He's the one that always comes to mind with that, right? Taking them from a 9 seed and rattling off 4 games in 4 days, winning the Big East tournament. Kemba, there's great examples of it, but right, we're also we just forget the ones where it's team needed to win and got run out by 30 against better team, and so it is something to and the other thing you got to pump the brakes on is it being too difficult to beat a team 3 times. It happens. Sometimes there's just a bad matchup, and I hear a lot of really, really tough to beat a team 3 times. And, I bet that probably comes out to be close to 50-50. I don't know that that's a huge, again, that there needs to be more to your handicap than, tough to beat a team 3 times. This is probably going to be close to the coin flip.
Gambler's fallacy, right? They're due. They're really due to win once to get. Well, I don't know. Are they? It's just, you got to treat it as one game. So it's a good point.
So you mean we shouldn't just take a team every time because it's a big game? Maybe a team that plays in the Dome the last 4 games?
I'll tell you.
Great spot. Have to win.
Yeah. No, I'll tell you.
Against shitty competition. Down by 30.
Yeah, I know. It just go. We could do another hour, guys, on why Jim Boeheim should have been like somehow dragged out like 5 years ago.
Oh
I
my God.
don't think you'll find a bigger example of overstaying your welcome in all of sports. It's so bad, and everyone here, locally, like no one has his back. Like it's just like every Syracuse fan in Syracuse, you would think that it's like dilute. Well, that's our guy. No, everyone wants him out. Everyone thinks he should have like
It's
he
crazy.
literally is he's tarnishing his like a really good legacy.
Right.
Like
I was gonna say,
I
when
really
did that
think he is.
happen? Like, obviously they had that run, about 8-10 years ago. But yeah, when did that? Obviously, he had his Carmelo year. Everyone loves him, national champion. Was it like 5-6 years ago? Is that when it dropped off?
Yeah, I would say the last decade has just been so the Carmelo year was 2003. It was that long ago, right?
Yeah,
So,
20 years now. Wow.
yeah. I mean, some of these other programs, you win, and 5 years later, if you're losing, like they're like, you gotta go. We gotta go to
Yeah.
someone else. And that's 2003. We're still living off that up here,
Yeah.
in central New York. With that being said, I would say that it's just like the general decline from like being perennial national power to being like average, like potential contender in the ACC. And the thing is, there is like a huge fan base here, and I'm just like they expect Syracuse to contend every single year, right? Like that's the expectation. Syracuse is a basketball school. Football, they'll be happy if we get a season like this past year where randomly they're 6-0 and they have like a big meaningful game. But basketball, they expect to be good every year, and you can tell with the fan support, they like the Duke game had 30,000, but a lot of other games that usually start to get toward that number, 19, 18,000, the dome being like half full, because the fans are pissed. They want a better product on the court, and Boeheim just hasn't delivered it. And he saved himself with a couple like random like
Crazy runs.
barely got in the tournament and then won a couple games. Or
Yeah.
else like
Shoot the lights out. Yeah.
yeah.
And somehow squeak through a couple rounds.
And
Chris, are you
guys,
telling me? Yeah.
the last thing there, he just refuses to do anything other than play this zone. And as you can see, like all these kids, I mean, they roll out of bed hitting half court shots these days. All these kids can shoot, and he can't get a quality big to come because the NBA doesn't play zone. So they're telling these kids, don't go to Syracuse because you need to learn how to play man if you want to play at the next level. So they're never going to get a dominant big in the back of that zone because anyone that's good enough, someone told them, don't go to Syracuse because you're going to get stuck in a zone. You're not going to know how to play man-to-man when it comes time to go pro.
Yeah.
Well, there it is.
Chris is allowing 100 to Georgia Tech at home. Is that bad?
When you're laying 8, yeah. Wait, let's lay 8 with that Blues team.
I mean, they might hold them under 100, so they got a minute left in that game to see what happens.
And that's
there.
and that's a bad Georgia Tech team. That is a bad team. They're getting run out by. I didn't even realize it was that bad until you.
I didn't either. And
That's
when
why
Chris
they
said
said
it, I looked
30.
at the score and said, "Holy shit!"
Oh my god, it's 96-72 right now. Come on now.
I thought it was a good spot for them today, but whatever.
There's probably 10,000 people at there's probably like barely anyone there because 31,000 people, including your boy, showed up to that Duke game and they got just pasted. Yeah. And everyone after that was like, I'm interested to see. I'm going to the Wake Forest game on Saturday because I got really good tickets.
Did you have a beer with Buff at that game?
Dude, let me tell you something. The Syracuse, there was so many people at that game. Like, it just the thought of like trying to like get out of my section to like, and like, his season tickets, I think are across the way from where I was.
No way.
Dude, like I had someone be like, "Hey, come meet me like behind the bleachers," because the whole thing is like set up behind the bleachers. There's like this whole fan area and like beer tents and stuff like that. And I was just like, dude, I'm not even leaving my seat. I'll never get back here. Because there was 31,000 people at that game. Wow. I bet you people are moving freely throughout the dome right now, though. Can't imagine
no
how
problem.
people showed up for that one.
And if they did, they probably left early because
they probably already left.
An ass beating.
Yeah.
This has been awesome with Adam to pick his brain about conference tournaments, hear about some of the travels. Chris, can you think of anywhere here on the West Coast somewhere that he should definitely go? Because I got one. I want to hear if Chris, you have a recommendation for next year's road trip.
Next year's road trip. I mean, when I was talking to him, I said for sure we got to hit up. I mean, if LMU is decent again and they're hosting someone like they were, that was one of the best events. I did not think it was going to be that cool, but obviously an overtime thriller against St. Mary's when you're a big home dog is great. The Aztecs, I went to school down in San Diego. That would be a great one if they were hosting, another, Mountain West foe that's really good, like a Boise or a Nevada or something like that. And then, like I said, I got the Bren Center at UCI is great if they're playing well too, and they host like a Long Beach. I'm gonna go. I might go to a game here in the next week at UCI. I'll let you guys know how that one is. I think they have one more home game before their conference tourney starts. But other than that, Matt, I mean, I don't know. I mean, the Galen Center. We talked about USC and UCLA are close to each other. What do you think?
How about the Save Mart Center, Chris?
Yeah, Fresno. Yeah. They're feisty. You love to see they're feisty at home, kind of like Wyoming. They're always catching 4 or 5, and they'll give you a run for your money.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'd love to come out. Fresno State once it gets into conference play, and that's the other thing too. I'm starting to get a little strategic about I'm saving some I'm saving ones that I like. If I don't think it's going to be a great crowd at any point in the season, I'll go early. That's what I started to do this last year. And then I'll save the ones I think are going to be so much better during conference play. That Loyola Marymount game you were at looked awesome. I was actually, I'm like, man, I wish I knew this was going to be this cool. I probably would have came out for it.
Yeah,
but
it was awesome. Yeah, they were crazy. They showed up 5 minutes late, and the game started really bad. But my cousin works at St. Mary's. He's been going there with that program for 15 years. He said, I've never seen this. I'm like, well, it makes sense. They're not a good basketball team, but this year, 16-7, that's another one. They could probably get to the quarters or the semis but they're not going to last past, St. Mary's and Gonzaga.
Yeah, I wouldn't be I said coming into the season, West Coast Conference was super deep. There was a bunch of good teams, even teams that didn't pan out that I thought were going to be good, like Pepperdine just didn't pan out. But you're right. It's probably going to be the dust is going to settle and we're just going to see Gonzaga probably cutting the nets down. But I wouldn't be that surprised if someone else, maybe a Loyola Marymount, maybe someone could get to the final in that one. There's the way that tournament's set up. That tournament's set up for someone to get hot and beat someone that's been sitting around, not really in the mood, if you will. So that's
we just saw Pepperdine. I mean, I was on Pepperdine the game after Gonzaga beat LMU by 50. I was on Pepperdine. I said, and they're really bad, and they're catching 16.5. They only lost by 7 or 8. I mean, they gave the Zags a pretty good run for their money. But
Adam, St. Mary's would be a cool gym to go to.
We got in
there.
It's only that I was shocked when my cousin said St. Mary's, and he said Gonzaga is really small too.
Oh, Gonzaga's really small.
Yeah, and he said then when he told me the BYU, like you said, was huge. I'm like, how does BYU have the stadium, but the Zags haven't made one for them like that?
Yeah,
St. Mary's, it's 3,500. It seats 3,500. So you talk about high school gyms on the Northeast. I haven't been to a game. I toured the school there when I was looking at grad schools, and it's so small and it's really cool in there. And every time you watch them on TV, the crowd's going nuts. I mean, they've been good for a long time. So that would be a cool one to get up to the Northern California and the Bay Area. Moraga is beautiful. You drive to the school and it's like you're driving through the Shire and the Lord of the Rings. The hills are all green. It's really, really cool.
I will literally. I have no. If we can get St. Mary's Gonzaga tickets next year, I don't care how much they cost.
That would be sick.
We'll do it, and we'll get it done. I feel like that's got to be one that we just schedule way early. Figure out.
Yeah.
For
sure.
How to get there. For sure. Yeah. Text my cousin. Hey, I need four, brother.
BYU's about to be in the Big 12, right? There's going to be a whole.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, are they?
Yeah. So that place. So I was there early in the year, and they still had a great crowd. There was still 13,000. Man, they get big game. They're going to get 19. How about them in the Big 12? They're going to probably get 19,000 for every like almost every conference game, because that fan base goes to every game. They'll go to every game. Like if 13,000 are going to show up to see Missouri State in November, every one of those Big 12 games is going to be probably a sellout or close to it. That'll be an interesting wrinkle, in that conference going forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, Adam, that was great. How many more places are you hitting? I know you said you'll be
all of a sudden coughing here.
Yeah.
So I kind of ended up, I actually was going to go somewhere this weekend, and Mallory and I ended up getting like awesome, like third row at the Dome for Syracuse Wake Forest, which they're probably just giving away for free after tonight's performance.
At this point, yeah.
But so I'm going to go to that game. Can't count that, right? So I'm only counting unique venues. So my plan, I'm at 23. I'd like to get to 25 each season. I will probably target the America East tournament, Patriot League tournament, or Northeast Conference tournament, and just hit maybe like a conference championship game or two, like depending on where it is. I'd like to get to at least one home campus site conference championship game. So that's my goal for the next couple weeks.
Nice.
Hell yeah.
Well, it's been a fun season for you. Still so much to look forward to with conference tournaments, with March Madness. Here on the Fade U podcast, college basketball content just starting. We got a couple more weeks to Selection Sunday, so look for our next episode probably early next week. But we can't thank Adam enough for joining us. Adam, you're the best. Let's have another, you've been, I don't want to jinx you, but have you won 5 out of 6 and some pushed on the one over the weekend? It's been a good run here lately.
Yeah. So actually the push was Dartmouth, ridiculous push.
Right.
Watching that.
We're sorry to tell you we got a better line, so we won.
You got, okay, good. That's good. I was hoping, I know some people out there got 10.5. Mm-hmm. Thrilled for that. Unfortunately, that was one scenario where I did not get 10.5. I got 10. So I truly did get a push, and we'll count it as a push, but I'm glad some people hit that. But yeah, so since then I've actually got 5 in a row, and the 5%er tonight for me is Texas State, which already started, up 12-10, 11 minutes to go in the first half. So maybe we'll make it 6 in a row, and hopefully we can keep it going.
I thought last night was 6 in a row. Was your 6th?
Chris, I haven't slept in a while. So it's let's see. We had Baylor Gonzaga on Saturday, Tulane Manhattan on Sunday, and then last night would have been Sacramento State.
Sac State.
So that's 5 in a row.
Okay.
If you got a good number on Dartmouth, you have 6 in a row.
There you go.
Oh, that's okay.
All right, we're gonna call it a pod right there to go get on my ESPN Plus and check out Texas State, and hopefully not sweat that one as much as Sac State last night. I am
right. Wait. You forgot the Jaspers covered Manhattan.
No, that's what I said.
Oh, you said Manhattan?
Yeah. Oh. Manhattan, Wichita State was Sunday.
Uh-huh.
So
okay.
Either way,
there we go.
Yeah, it's been a
Beautiful.
good run.
Great
like I
work.
said, hopefully we can keep
Let's
it going.
ride that fire. Ride that fire.
100%. Make sure you're giving Adam a follow at Top Flight SI. Check out his work on WagerTalk, one of our best friends. And Adam, we'll do it again in a little while. Maybe once baseball gets started, we'll have you back, and we'll talk about all these wacky new rules and pitch clocks and all this crazy shit that's happening in Major League Baseball. So in the meantime, make sure you're following us at Fade U Sports. Thank you for listening. Chris, just remind everybody what happens sometimes if you bet on poop.
Sometimes you get an Okie State performance like last night and they shit the bed. But then today you might get a Georgia Tech performance in the Dome and you win by 30. Sorry, Buck.